So when I was a small girl, my dad wanted to make life magical for me. He took me to North Africa and propped me up on a camel. I got to ride on a beast alongside the Mediterranean Sea with Roman ruins in the background. He took me to souk, sold me, but he bought me back quickly after. Teaches you negotiation skills, he said. Once when I was 5 and he came back from surgery, he had a long scar from the top of his chest to the very bottom of his left leg, and he told me that a huge snake had crept in there in the middle of the night. For a couple of years, I thought I had a pet boa living inside my dad with whom he shared this symbiotic relationship. See, I think my dad wanted to make things interesting for me because ever since I was born, he was dying. He had a rare combination of really bad diabetes and serious heart problems, a killer combo. His doctors said he said his doctors had told him, and a killer. And so because of that, you know, he wanted to sort of like make the best of things. Thank you. Sorry. Sorry. I'm almost there. So my mom and I were always at the ready for something to happen to him. You know, I remember some of my earliest memories. I would wake up in the middle of the night to a loud thud reverberating against the hardwood floors, run downstairs to see my dad splayed on the kitchen floor, a jar of Jif, you know, strewn next to him. He'd been trying to stave off a collapse by trying to lower his blood sugar because it was often plummeting or lowering. And so for a while, you know, I just stopped eating PB&Js at friends' houses. My friends' parents always thought I was being rude, but I just had a creepy association between legumes and death, kind of a creepy association for a kid to have. My mom and I were always at the ready for something to happen to him. You know, he had always sort of made it seem as though anything could happen at any given point. And my mom had this really uncanny way of sensing when something was about to happen. There was this one time we were at the beach, and you know, we're in the water, waves lapping against us. She turns to me and she says, "Allegra," my mom's from Uruguay. "Allegra, run and call Mrs. Angel. You know, make sure that your father's okay. Have her go check on him." I do. I run out of the water, feeling guilty for even spending a day at the beach while my father was perpetually dying. Grab a towel around me, run up and call Mrs. Angel, our white-haired next-door neighbor who looks like an 80-year-old version of Amelia Bedelia. As she goes and says she'll go across the street to check in on my dad, I know that something's wrong because it's taking as long as it is. You know, my mom, I know my mom's right. She's one of these fierce Latin Catholics who perpetually has a candle lit in front of a tall statue of Mary. But she also considers herself to be something of a clairvoyant. So when Mrs. Angel came back to the phone, I knew she was right. She said that, yes, in fact, my dad had been on the floor, that she'd called the paramedics, and that they were on their way to the hospital. When I came back down, my mom was awaiting me. I told her the news. She gave me a look, gravely. "Yes, I had a feeling. I saw it. I felt it happen." The soothsayer and I went to the hospital. Years later, I'm in my mid-30s. I'm in my downtown office in Manhattan, and I have a funny feeling. My dad's health had since worsened over the years, and he had moved from our home in D.C. back to Utah, which is where he's originally from. He'd never said to us what made him do it, but that wasn't uncharacteristic. He just did things. You know the Matt Damon movie, Good Shepherd? He's like that CIA operative who always kept his cards close to his vest. So I was at a point, I think at some point we must have made a compact with each other, you know, in which we wouldn't disclose too much of ourselves to the other, and we stuck to it. I made, you know, the annual pilgrimages out to Utah to see him, picked up the phone and, you know, made the 5-minute phone calls to make sure that he wasn't, you know, strewn on the floor somewhere. But that was pretty much it. I used to keep this Manhattan diary. It's like an agenda with a bunch of subway maps in which you record your appointments. And I included everything in there, including wake up. When you're an accomplishment whore, every little check mark makes a difference. Call Dad was the last item on Sunday, the absolute last priority of every week. So I'm at my desk, and I'm in my mid-30s. I'm single. I feel like a failure for it. And I'm just trying to sort of be a little bit more of an intuitive creature. So I'm doing things like buy Feel It Real books that encourage, yeah, I did this, that encourage you to, if you want to have the relationship of your dreams, to be more of a sensual, intuitive creature. I wear blazers. I'm a woman who wears blazers. But so I'm trying to, I'm sitting at my desk, I'm writing a brief on racial profiling and public accommodations, but at the same time, I'm trying to tap into my feminine side. When I have a hunch, I hear a voice. It's working. It sounds like a Uruguayan mystic. Allegra, call your father. I do. And he's talking gibberish, the kind that indicates to me that he's not doing well, that it's possible he's about to collapse. I'm in New York. He's in Utah. He clearly can't get to the hospital on his own. I don't trust that he can hang up the phone and call 911. And his brother, who lives directly across the hallway from him in an apartment building, is nowhere to be found. I fly out to Utah that afternoon. I find him. I take him to the hospital. They secure him. They stabilize him. Seems like everything's going to be okay. Head back to his apartment to go to sleep. Around 2 in the morning, I get a call. It's the nurse. It's kind of a new variation on the thud. Your father, he took a turn for the worst. We can still get him, though. We can still bring him back. You just need to come in here and authorize us to resuscitate him. Pull on my jeans, run across the hallway, knock on my uncle's doorway. So just to exemplify just how, or to draw the point how both my uncle and my father live quite hermetic lives. They'd rather stay at home and read stacks of books and magazines and nuke microwave Stouffer's dinners and only just sort of like wave at each other in the hallway as they're picking up their mail. Scott is a super sweet guy like my father, but also impenetrable. We're in the car driving towards the hospital. I'm like, what do I do? Allegra, he says, taking drags of a menthol cigarette. Sometimes you just gotta let people go. Felt a little too cool hand looped to me. We get to the hospital. There are 2 camps, nurses and doctors, about 25 of them. One camp is fresh-faced, young interns. You can do it. He can be saved. All you have to do is sign the paperwork, but you've got to act fast. The other is stern-faced, stoic. This camp says, your father wouldn't have wanted it anyway. He didn't sign the paperwork himself. And even if we do it, there's no way to know what's going to happen. I want to listen to my father, or I want to listen to my uncle, want to listen to what these people have to say too, but all I can think about is, I just got to get my dad. I signed the paperwork. So it works out for him. They save him. He comes back. It feels like a miracle, and yet I don't know what to expect. Part of me wants to sort of like envision a Paul Simon reunion, father and daughter, teary-eyed with that song in the background. But I walk into the room. I see a man. He's small. He's frail. He's hooked up to half a dozen machines, many of which are still beeping. I walk over to him. He looks at me and says, I think you made a mistake. So I didn't give him that Hollywood ending. I didn't bring him magic the way that he did so many years earlier. But over the years, after I thought about it, and I thought about why he felt like he needed to distance himself from us, almost in a way of protecting us from him, I realized it wasn't magic we needed, it was connection. It took 38 years to figure that out. And little by little, with a couple more hospital stays, a couple more visits to the hospital, but many more calls and visits in which we really disclosed ourselves to one another and showed ourselves who we really are. A dad from Utah moved back from Utah to the East Coast, in with a Uruguayan mystic from whom he had earlier estranged himself, and now on any given day of the week, he picks up the phone to call and say, sweetheart, I want to tell you something.